Okay, so this class is recorded. This is the second week. So this is the traditions essay. This is my third day to teach this lesson. So you get the benefit of learning what other students did wrong, right? So we're going to do today is a little different, and I don't do them very often, and they're narratives. Do you know what a narrative is? Can you describe what a narrative is from your perspective?
Like when someone tells the story.
Okay, is it true or made up?
I think it's true. Oh
It
wait,
is
no,
true.
it's made up.
No,
Oh,
no, it's true. So this is a little different from the short story that I assigned in November. That was kind of free reign, use your imagination, write about whatever you want. A personal narrative is always in first person. So it's me, I, myself. Those are the pronouns you should use. And we don't do that very often, do we? What makes that so difficult, Viamini, is you have to start with your lead in first person, your body paragraphs in first person, your conclusion in first person. And you'll notice today your topic and thesis sentences and restated thesis sentence will be in first person. So it's hard to remember to do that. You're going to want to use third person possessive pronouns, and you can when referring to my family, like our and we and us. I will tell you, if you feel like you're doing that too much, then it's becoming more about them than me. So you really want to, take your story down back to me. It's not about your family. It could be how you are with your family. So these are tricky. I don't assign these very often, but they are absolutely essential. And when they really count, Viomini, is college essays. You have one shot to impress an admissions at the college that you want to go to, and you have to know how to write them. You have to know how to weave a story that's personal, a topic that's relatable. So let me just start with a personal story about traditions. And I'm going to intentionally tell you a story about a Christmas day that kind of went wrong, really happened. So I am the cook on Christmas Day for my family. So I host about 15 people. We make, we have a turkey, we have ham, mashed potato, you name it, vegetables, 4 or 5 desserts. This one Christmas, my mother and father-in-law always come, and they're kind of older. My siblings come, and this year happened to me, my brother and his family, and they had just, I think this was about 11 years ago. They live in Houston, so they just happened to have, Hurricane Katrina hit, and they were really struggling. They were displaced. Their house was underwater. They were moving into an apartment, and so they were really not in a good place. So they brought their 2 dogs, their 2 kids, my husband, my brother and his wife, and the 2 dogs, little dogs, and at the time I had a little Min Pin named Hershey, started to urinate all over my house. And I was like, Gene, this is my brother. Listen, your dogs are peeing all over my house. It's not good. Let's put him outside. He goes, it's too cold. Just deal with it. I was like, and I'm all about hospitality, Viamini, but that's not cool. So I'm behind spraying. Then his daughter was put on some medication. She's asleep upstairs. The wife is in my bathroom vomiting for hours. Meanwhile, we're all trying to talk like nothing's going on. And it was just one kind of cataclysmic event after another. And it just kind of layered on itself. By 5 o'clock when they left, and other people left early because they were like, oh, I don't want to be here. My husband looks at me, and at the time, I think my daughter was 16 and my son was 19. He goes, let's get out of here. And we were like, where are we going to go on Christmas Day? What's open? We said, we'll just go look at lights. Let's just get in the car and get out of here. So we did. We, Googled what's open on Christmas Day, and it just happened to be Sonic. So here we are after having, a wonderful meal that just went wrong, went sideways. We had a Sonic meal and we decided to go see a movie. We just weren't ready to go back home. And so that has been a tradition every year since. And we laugh about it. We said we never would have done this if we hadn't had the worst Christmas ever. So now we pick a movie. Sometimes my daughter and I go to, a girl movie, and my husband and my son go to a guy movie. And sometimes we don't eat at Sonic, but we'll go get a Blizzard, just to keep up the tradition. So traditions sometimes are started, out of something unusual that happens. And sometimes traditions are intentional. We just spent 4 months. In August, we talked about fables. They are oral tradition, right? Then we talked about fairy tales, again, passed down, oral tradition. Then we talked about Greek mythology and Roman mythology, again, traditions. So I think you have a sense of what tradition means, but I did give you the definition. So if you look at your page, and I'm assuming you have it, Viomania, and I apologize for sending you the advanced class as well. That was my mistake. Oops. So a tradition is defined as a belief, a custom, a way of doing something, and it could have existed for a long time. It could be a new tradition, but it's usually a custom that we honor, that we can count on from year after year. And it brings us a sense of security. We look forward to it. We rely on these events. They unify us and they bring back memories of the past. And the players of the event may change, but their tradition remains the same. And here's the thing, sometimes traditions end. Think about what happened with the pandemic, right? All of these gatherings ended, right? And then we had to find a new way to do it. We had to do Zoom gatherings, which nobody liked, right? And I don't like this either, but it's better than, it's in a pinch, it's better than not having any connection whatsoever. So make sure you're using your synonyms. We don't want to use the word tradition, 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 tradition. So belief, habit, custom, practice, legacy, ritual. And a lot of our traditions do come from our beliefs. For example, I love Diwali, love it. I always know right around Halloween, I see lights going up on houses and I'm like, wait a minute, that's a little early for Christmas. And I always know it's not for Christmas, but I know a lot of Indian families put up their Diwali lights and leave them up for Christmas, right? So I think that's so cool. And I'm always watching going, ooh, what are they celebrating? I love the tradition of Holi. I want to come, invite me. I'll wear white. You can throw paint on me. I think that's cool. Don't you have to admit, July 4th, the idea of fireworks, celebrating Independence Day, which has become not only a tradition, but a national holiday, but it started as a tradition, right? It started that way. Maybe your birthday, right? Maybe you have traditions on your birthday, something your mom makes you breakfast or gets balloons and decorates your house. I don't know. So I'm going to start with just a little bitty personal narrative here by May Patterson. And I want you to notice the first person pronouns. Every family, especially mine, should eat together often. My grandmother used to say, and she worked really hard to make our family dinner special. Almost every week of my life until I went to college, I had the privilege of gathering with my extended family around grandmother's table. Now, grandmothers, Viomini, especially my mother-in-law, my kids' grandmother, they're very traditional. For example, my mother-in-law, she gets out her mother's china. And I'm talking 100-year-old, her mother's china, really delicate. The plates are exquisite china, like you're afraid to break them. She gets out the crystal. She literally polishes the silverware that is really silver. And then she has this beautiful floral arrangement with these tablecloths, with these exquisite cloth napkins that I'm worried that my kids will, wipe their face and, ruin the napkins. And we dress up. That is her Thanksgiving. And we just had it. And we dressed up. I'm not like that at my Christmas celebration. It's much more, it's Christmas Day. The kids have opened the presents. We're a little more relaxed. We're a little bit more casual. But I actually love that tradition. Um, and now that they're getting older and we don't know how much time we have left with them, we don't know. So that's why I really, this story resonated with me. She said grandmother was particular. For example, she didn't like serving mere store-bought produce, so she put up homegrown vegetables all summer to serve at our family dinners. Can you imagine? She made homemade mayonnaise because the kind in a jar just wouldn't do. Viomini, how do you make homemade mayonnaise? I don't know. That's pretty specific. And she always kept homemade cheese straws on hand just in case extra company dropped by, of course. And I'd give anything to go back in time and sit at her table once again. Christmas dinner at grandmother's was my favorite. Roasted turkey and dressing, hot buttery yeast rolls with jelly made from plums in her orchard. None of us have orchards anymore, Viomini. We have small backyards because that's all we can afford, right? We don't have acres and acres of trees and orchards, right? That's way back. You could afford that. And just in case we didn't get enough carbs, grandmother served caramel cake with Christmas custard for dessert. Her custard was made from an old family recipe that had been passed down for generations. This week, as I pulled out grandmother's handwritten custard recipe, I felt so blessed. Family gatherings, whether you realize it or not, make your life so much richer. But honestly, sometimes I've taken family get-togethers for granted. I've overlooked their significance and failed to grasp the gifts family gatherings can provide. And I love this story because I think this year in particular at Christmas is going to be different from a lot of families. I think even last year, there were families that were social distancing with the pandemic. And I think this year is going to be a time when there is more togetherness. There's even a commercial on TV right now, and it has a really pretty young lady sitting at the table with no one there to show what happened last year. Excuse me. And then there's this year, like before and after, with everyone at the table. So I think the pandemic has taught us how important traditions are because we lost several, didn't we? And we had to kind of modify them and create new ones. And sometimes they don't measure up to past traditions. So notice the story was personal. And why is that so important? It pulls us in, Viomini. I told you when you do personal narratives, you do it for college admissions, right? You want to tell them a story, and through that storytelling, you get to know a little bit about a person's character. Do we know about her character through this narrative? Yeah, there's a couple things we know. She loves her grandmother. She respects her grandmother. She also acknowledges the attention to detail and the hard work that her grandmother put into these gatherings, which shows she has maturity to recognize that. So it's really interesting what narratives can tell a person, especially in college admissions. And you can really show your character through the story you choose to tell. And a lot of students don't know what to do. And that's why every now and then we need to practice a personal narrative. So 8 rich gifts of family gatherings. The gift of hospitality. Love that. Did you happen to read the Greek myth Baucis and Philemon with me? Did you read that one? I love that story. It was, remember, Zeus and his brother came down to this village and they dressed poorly on purpose to see if anyone would welcome them after they knocked on the door. And of course, seeing how poor they looked, the villagers shunned them and wouldn't extend an invitation to them until they found this old couple, Baucis and Philemon, who gave everything that they had, which impressed Zeus so much, they were rewarded. And of course, the villagers were destroyed and killed, and which happens in Greek mythology. But you get the point. And if you've done that story with me, you understand hospitality, that can be traditional too. Maybe you go on a trip to India You know, a lot of people went this summer, a lot of people are going over Christmas, and maybe you always stay with your aunt and uncle or your grandma and grandpa, and they offer their hospitality to you. And when they come to the United States, to Texas, you reciprocate, right? The gift of not getting your way. Someone's behind you. Would you let them know this is Zoom recorded? Just wanted to make sure you knew that. Yeah, I don't know where they walked into, but yeah. So the gift of not getting your way. I love this, especially when you're visiting a family. You don't maybe get to sleep in your own bed, right? You have to eat foods that they prepare, and maybe it's not your favorite, right? And you have to eat it anyway. The gift of gratitude. Um, just having, you know, someone else prepare a meal, right? I'm sure that your mom appreciates that when she doesn't have to do the work, when she's doing it every day at your house, right? Sometimes it's just nice to appreciate that. Of course, when someone, you know, polishes the silver and gets out their best china and their crystal and, you know, creates a beautiful table, that's an act of love. You know, I'm doing this to show you I want a beautiful presentation. And of course, that's for guests. The gift of community. I think we know that one from the pandemic. Just being able to connect and have people in your home without that worry and that concern. And then we create this gift of memories, and good and bad. You know, I shared with you at the beginning of class a Christmas gone wrong. And honestly, I mean, it's really interesting. I love essays sometimes that tell what went wrong, because they're fascinating. You laugh and you go, oh, right, oh, right. You know, you could have a 4th of July where you're, or a Diwali where you're lighting fireworks, and someone, you know, something happens and someone has to go to the hospital, and you're like, oh my gosh. I'll tell you another personal story. We went on a beach trip during the pandemic. We had so much fun. We decided to go back and we rented this beach house. Well, the second time we went back, my dogs ate jellyfish. And I don't know if you know anything about jellyfish. They will kill you. They would kill a dog. So I'm calling my sister on the phone. She's like, go get Benadryl. They don't have Benadryl anywhere. I have to go like all these places. And it wasn't as fun. There were mosquitoes everywhere. So it's really interesting. You know, vacations sometimes can be hit or miss, can't they? And a lot of traditions involve vacations, don't they? The gift of sharing your faith. Isn't that what Diwali and Holi and some of your festivals and vacations are? You know, you're honoring your gods, and it's something that you have in common. And it's a way that you can sit down together. Have you noticed food is almost at every traditional gathering? And then the gift of hope. Whatever you do when you gather with people, that sense of community does give us hope, which is why we need it. So I actually chose that story for a reason. So I also want to share you one more story. So I'm going to share you, well, I already showed you 2 stories. Here's the third one. I'm a voracious reader, Theomini. I've had so many parents tell me, how do you know what you know? How do you know to teach writing? I can't explain it. I think it's because I read all the time, and it becomes second nature, right? Words and how to express and how to create story elements. So I can remember how important reading was. When my kids were born, I made a vow, which I kept. And I remember reading to my kids at 4 months, no joke, 10 books a day. We'd go to the library with a stack this big, picture books, 10 books a day. Even if they wanted them repeated, it was 10 books a day. My kids were fluent reading when they started kindergarten. When I say fluent, I mean fluent. And people ask me, like, what's the magic thing to do? How do I get my kids just read? So we read traditional Christmas books every Christmas that dated back to the 1900s. My family passed them down. And when there was a new release, I remember when Polar Express was released, we'd add a new book. And that's what we did. We read Christmas stories, old Christmas stories. So let me give you an example. I know it from memory. 'Twas the night before Christmas, when all through the house not a creature was stirring, not even a mouse. And Ma in her kerchief and Pa in his cap had just settled down for a long winter's nap, when what to my wondering eyes should appear but a miniature sleigh and 8 tiny reindeer. I can recite the whole thing. How can you do that? Traditions. Think about those fairy tales, those fables, those Greek myths. When you tell them over and over again, they become tradition. And it's really fascinating how they can create that in your family. So we're going to end class with a story, but before we do, so scroll past the story. I want you to go to the outline. Okay. Remember, this essay will be written in first person using I, me, and my. I'm going to catch you. You're going to want to use third person. Make sure you're using things about pronouns about yourself. I want you to try a lead idea, but the lead idea should not be the body paragraph. Okay, so you should always start with the body paragraph. So let's talk about what I want you to do today. And those of you who are listening to the Zoom recording session, if you're not paying attention and you're not listening to instructions, you're going to work much harder than you have to, because I'm about to give you a break. Okay, Viomina, is there any way you can change your document? Okay, can you print out the document? Can you print it out in there, or do you have to go run and get it? Okay. Do you want to do that real quick? Okay, I'll meet you here. So for those of you who are watching at home, and obviously she's left, make sure you have the document printed out so you can make these corrections, because I'm going to make your life a whole lot easier. And if you don't listen and you don't make the corrections, you're not going to know what to do, or you're not going to do it correctly. And that will take an extra long time to revise your essay, because we'll have to edit it and tell you that. So part of my class is not just, listening to a story or listening to a lesson. Part of my class is whether or not students listen to and follow the instructions. And I'm always amazed that I give instructions and students don't hear or wait too long to do their essay. That's a lot of you. And they forget, and they end up making it harder on themselves. And believe it or not, I do that for a reason, because it's what a lot of kids do in school. If you wait and do your essay too late, you miss those important details or instructions. And that's going to hurt you on your overall grade. And we don't want that. So that's why I throw so many different essays and so many different instructions. And I always change it up. I try not to do the same thing. And we got used to doing stories for 4 months. So now I'm really switching it up. And we rarely do a narrative. And she is taking a while. So I'm just going to keep talking here. If you look at the information on the outline, basic essay outline on traditions. Okay, can't do it? Okay, then just listen to me carefully. Okay. You have a way on your document, right? Okay, so here's what we're going to do. This is why sometimes an online class is not so easy. Do you see the thesis where it says, I enjoy family traditions and know they're important in connecting me with my past and my culture? We're going to stop the sentence right there. Because, Viomini, listen carefully. I'm not going to make you do the second paragraph. You get to cross out the second paragraph. Remember, your thesis says both things that are in both body paragraphs. Well, if I'm not making you do the second body paragraph, you don't need the second part of the thesis, do you? So I don't know if there's a way to mark that on your document. Is there a way to do that?
I think you can do, I think you can like open it in Docs.
Do that.
And then, okay.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. Okay, so what you're going to do is did you do it? Okay. I enjoy family traditions and know they're important in connecting me with my past, comma, you're going to write the word and. My culture, you're going to put a period after culture and you're going to erase the rest of the sentence. Okay. As a matter of fact, you know what I can do, Viomini? I don't want to do that. I'll do it at the, you know what? I'll send you. I'm going to do this at the very end. I'm going to send you the document again at the end of class. I will fix it as I go here. Does that make sense? So don't worry, you don't have to do it. I'll fix it as we go here. So that's what we're going to do. I'm going to give you a little bit of a break. I think we all could use one, yes? But if I give you that break, would you do me a favor and write a really good one paragraph? Okay. So body one family custom I look forward to. Notice I didn't use the word tradition. That was purposeful. Celebrating every year is blank because it is a way my family builds strong bonds. Okay, remember this is a narrative and remember it's true. So tell this like a story, which means a true story, as it should be. Include who, what, where, when, why. Make sure it's a minimum of 8 sentences. I hope you know it should be more than that. Celebrating traditions from one year to the next keeps the past alive. We're going to cross out the second body paragraph, and then we're going to have to tweak the restated thesis. I appreciate how my family celebrates specific traditions. So I'm just going to modify this, and I know it will be important for me to pass those on in my future, something like that. Okay. So if you go to the beginning, you're going to write a true story in your body paragraph, Viomini. So you got to know which story you're going to tell first. So how do you know what you're going to write about? Well, you got to brainstorm traditions. So we kind of did that on my board. I'm going to see that. So this is what mates said some traditions that they had in the past. And so you would have to brainstorm your favorite traditions. That's how you get to the right topic. They said bake sweets. And I said, well, food is pretty much at any gathering, right? Savory and sweet. But maybe it's a specific one that has specific foods, right? Travel. If your tradition is to go skiing every Christmas, and that's, you have great stories about that. That's a good story. Having guests, when your cousins come over, right? Every summer. If that's the tradition, or when you go visit them, then you write about stories about that. Other traditions, when you share gifts, like Secret Santa gifts, you could tell a story about, you don't like it. I had a story this week, Viomini, about Secret Santa, and I totally got it because I feel the same way about Secret Santa. Like, I put a lot of thought into my little Secret Santa. I wrap it up, right? And I always feel like I get the short end of the stick. Like, I get something from somebody and they really don't know me. Do you know what I mean? Have you ever done that? And then I have to pretend, oh, this is fantastic. I love it. And I don't. And maybe I even regift it. Oops, right? So I'm just not a fan of that Secret Santa thing. Have you ever played that? Right? If caroling is a tradition, and I used to do that in choir, and I hated to go, but you know what's really interesting? Now I remember it fondly. So sometimes traditions your family like makes you go, and you're like, oh, kicking and screaming, and then later on you go, you know what, that was pretty fun. I didn't like that so much, mom and dad making me go. So that would be a good story, anything like that. So you want to stay in person, first from the beginning to the end. So what you're going to want to do is create a second kind of mini story, right, in your lead that you can connect to the middle and connect to the conclusion. So you can scroll down, and there is a student example essay I really enjoyed. The only thing I want you to be careful with, Viomini, is this. Don't, and I'll send you this shortly. don't describe so much. Narrate a story, tell a story, and make sure it's a true story. Got it? Because next week, we're actually going to do an essay when I see you on Saturday that we actually describe something, and it's a little bit different. They're going to be very similar. So you're going to see the difference between a narrative story and a descriptive story. They're very different. Some things in common, but a different kind of tone. So at the end, you'll see a little story called Little Piccola. And what I love about this story, and I'm going to ask you to read it on your own, and I haven't really gotten to it in class, but it is in your document. It's 2 minutes for you to read it. And it's really a story about a young girl who knows nothing about Christmas. Her mother never celebrates it, and she discovers what it is, and she has a different perspective of it. And it's a beautiful story about what Christmas should really be like. So I hope you enjoy that. All right, any questions?
So I did the lead, the body paragraph 1 and conclusion, right?
Correct. I'm going to send
Okay.
it to you right now. And so
Okay.
you don't have to worry. I'm going to send you the changed outline. It will be after the student example essay. So you're going to have to look for it, aren't you? I'm not going to make it easy for you. Okay?
Thank
All
you,
right.
bye.
Have a great one.
You too.